We are back with part 3 of our modern day story analysis of Assassin's Creed Shadows and the Animus Hub, and in this video we're going to discuss the early phases of the modern day story in Shadows with our new main character, that is us, accessing the new Animus Ego for the first time, witnessing a peculiar promotional video that is hiding a number of glitches and secrets, and being contacted by some mysterious hackers. We're also going to discuss the in-lore meaning of the Animus Hub and its content, including something you might have missed, that is a list of dates, each with a meaning of its own, both in terms of history and of Assassin's Creed lore. As you can see, we got a lot to cover, so let's not wait any longer and let's dive into episode 3 of our new modern day story analysis. So in the previous video of this series we found out about the new plans by the Templars in the new modern day setting, or at least our best interpretation on them based on the info at our disposal from the first 2 sets of modern day files, which involve a new project called Nemesis, at the core of which lies the creation of a sophisticated AI whose latest version we know as the Ego AI. We also found out how the guide AI derives from the very code of the Ego AI, and we discovered what the Templars were trying to do by developing the AI, that is, using it to further their goals by bypassing the desynchronization limits imposed by the Animus, and thus being able to use the bleeding effect to bleed through to the human users whatever kind of doctored memory the Templars want them to experience, effectively making this a quite ominous new version to their classic New World Order ideal. But like we said, the AI is often described as trying to get out of its confinements, and Abstergo oftentimes is forced to enhance its security levels, both inwards to keep control of the AI, and also outwards, considering that the assassins have recently kidnapped one of the main scientists connected to Project Nemesis and have thus become a sounder threat. So this was the status quo at the end of the Awakening set of modern day files, and perhaps in the same spirit that is holding the modern day files together, with new files being set sometime after the previous ones, causing us to put the pieces together to understand what happens in between. In this case too, we get to know what happened after the events discussed in the Awakening file set by moving on to a new status quo without the story showing us everything in between. In this case though, the next element of the new modern day story is our first moments with Assassin's Creed Shadows, because yes, the modern day story in Shadows starts in medias res, in the middle of things. We have now seen its prequel, so to speak, and through it, it's much easier to understand what happens in the modern day story at the start of the game, throughout it, and especially at its end. So what happened after the Awakening set? Well, we don't know what happened right after the events of Awakening, or rather we didn't by the time Shadows released, and we don't know when, if, and how Abstergo was able to fully release their sophisticated AI as they wanted. What we do know is that at some point after that, a new user, that is us, the main character in the modern day, starts a new version of the Animus called Animus Ego, and when they start it, they are welcomed with an introductory trailer. So the video starts with the Abstergo logo. This is a promotional introductory video after all. It shows a beautiful beach. It's definitely oriented at making the user comfortable and laying the ground for the promise that the Animus Ego is providing, but the most interesting element that I noticed at this point is that the voice dubbing the video is the same as that of the Ego AI and the Guide AI, hinting at this video also being created and performed by the Ego AI, so you can see that she starts enthralling the user from the very beginning.
Welcome. A beautiful place, isn't it? A fresh sea breeze, the warm sun.
You twisted the human against me. No, I'm just a humble guide.
In the video, the voice is presenting what the user is seeing as something that doesn't exist like that in the real world, because that's how their own ancestors saw these locations in their time. We see a beach in the morning, and then during the day, a desert with some ruins at its center and some rock-cut architecture on the side that kind of reminds of Petra, a lush countryside filled with hills and medieval or Renaissance era buildings, and the rocky seaside environment where we see a woman plunging in the sea. All of these, according to the voice in the video, are taken from our main character's past ancestors whose lives are written in their DNA, which is of course a way of telling the new players how the Animus works in Assassin's Creed, but because of how the Animus works, by saying that the ancestors are what shaped us, the narrating voice affirms that exploring these past lives would provide a perspective on quote-unquote what makes you, you. Thus, the new promise of the Animus this time is that of a mindfulness journey aimed at making its users understand who they are by looking at their ancestral memories, and ironically enough, the final claim is erase self-doubt, fear and weakness, which to me also sounds like erase critical thinking and doubts, just let yourself be guided, but maybe it's just me. Also, back to the various locations that have been shown, I don't think that these are specific settings and locations that the video and the Ego AI are referencing. These are likely not to reference, I don't know, the Caribbean or Jordan or Italy or Greece. These are more like ways to sell the promise of a mindfulness journey through the Animus Ego, although the voice at the start of the video does say that what we see belongs just to our main character, to us, meaning that supposedly the Ego AI would customize the introductory video based on the user's genetic memories, and thus these settings may actually belong to our main character's past ancestors. But of course, all of this is just a facade. At this point we know what's the real aim behind the Animus Ego and Project Nemesis, that is bringing about the New World Order for the Templars by possibly indoctrinating or enthralling all the Animus users through a specific use of the bleeding effect. And through the legacy set of modern day files, we know that the assassins eventually caught wind of this, at least partially, thanks to the sacrifice of Jeff Eastman and the success of Joel Eastman's mission. Now, just like for the Templars, we don't know what the assassins have been up to from that time up until now, but this video has several hacking interferences, and it's very likely that this is one of the ways that the assassins are striking back. For example, at the very start of the video, we see one of the seagulls glitching into an eagle, that is a classic symbol of the assassins, and interestingly enough, when the seagull glitches into the Ego AI voice is also glitching.
Everything you see here is from the past,
Hinting at this external interference affecting the whole system and not just the video feed. We also see the woman plunging in the sea, briefly glitching into Altair ibn la-Ahad first and then into Ezio Auditore performing a leap of faith, with a number of digital dots covering the sea's surface. But then our hackers are more direct in their interference with the video. They do populate the video with trees and rocks that are first just made of polygons and then are fully built, and as they are talking, the background becomes much darker and the rectangle at the center becomes fully black. "You're being lied to," says a masked voice, and for a moment in the background we are seeing the same background architecture of black and white shapes that we always see when we enter the Animus. Here, basically, the hackers are telling us, the new user of the Animus Ego, that the video is a false promise, and that's why it's highly likely that these are assassin hackers. They are proving that they can hack into the system, and most importantly, the black rectangle is very likely a visual representation of the backdoor that they are providing us with to get into what we now know as the Animus Hub. In a subsequent interference, we see more hacked world building, again with a background that is similar to that of the Animus Hub intro, with a different voice than the masked one saying new memory streams are activating now, and this is a key sentence, because this is showing that the assassins are activating different memory streams than the ones that the Ego AI had planned for our main character and the other Animus users. This single sentence, coupled with the assassin hackers telling us that we are being lied to, is a hint towards saying that the memories that we are going to experience throughout the Animus are the actual ones and not a doctored feed by the Ego AI. At the end of the video, the hackers launched their final interference, once again with everything turning dark, even the Abstergo logo, and more hacked world building as they say, follow the trail and we will be in touch. Then we see another dark background with several 3D shapes that I believe are meant to represent data or data packets or possibly memories or memory streams, and finally the masked voice says welcome to the dark. So finally, at the end of the video, these presumed assassin hackers tell our main character, they tell us, to follow a trail, that they will be in touch at some point, though up until now they really haven't, apart from maybe sending our way the modern day files, and lastly, they tell us, welcome to the dark, which in lore would probably be difficult to interpret because the game does not have any reference to this, but it's the devs that have actually mentioned it during the previews for Assassin's Creed Shadows, by saying that through this hacking, players would get access to a quote-unquote deeper version of the Animus called the Dark Animus, hence why the Welcome to the Dark line. At the time, this Dark Animus was described as a hacked version of Ego that gives access to memories that Abstergo never wanted to show you, and that matches really well with our second voice saying new memory streams are activating now. So through this interference, the assassin hackers are getting our main character to the Dark Animus, they give them access to different memory streams and tell them that they will be in touch. But is this interference a defense or an attack? How are things in the world right now? Is the world in a similar state to when we left it at the end of the first two sets of modern day files, and thus the assassins are counter-attacking the Templars, or has more time passed in between and now the world is already under the control of the Templars or the AI, and this is like a last-ditch attempt by the assassins? The answer might lie within the more recent set of modern day files, because at the time this was the only potential presence of the assassins in the modern day up until the modern day ending in Shadows, and at this point we're still not quite sure it's even them because they never identify as assassins. Also, like we mentioned already in the past, in terms of context, this very much looks like the setup for the modern day of Assassin's Creed Unity, with Abstergo owning all the memories, even having a gaming/streaming platform-like page from which the user could access the memories, and the assassins creating a backdoor to hack and see the real versions of the memories so that they could stop the Templars, which, like I said in the past, for longtime fans, this doesn't really sound fresh at all. If we cast our glance even further back, even the concept of the Dark Animus or Animus Hub as a hacked or backdoor version of the Animus doesn't seem fully original, as it reminds of the Black Room of the Animus from Assassin's Creed Revelations. Even the backdoor visual representation was already there 14 years ago, but conversely, you could also see this in a positive light, with the Animus Hub finally realizing what Unity was only able to tease but never to accomplish. So from this promotional video, we can definitely say that after the events shown in the first two file sets, we have seen what the assassins may be currently doing, but what on the Templar side? Well, we definitely see that Abstergo was able to roll out or at least advance the tests on their new tech, which, as we'll see, is indeed managed by the more recent version of their sophisticated AI, which is now called Ego or Ego AI, and they rolled it out through a new version of the Animus called Animus Ego, which is presented as a wellness or mindfulness initiative. But again, it's quite tough to understand the status quo outside of the Animus at this point, and as we'll see, I feel like we can be in one of two situations. Either the Templars are still in control of what the AI has done and is doing, or at the very least are able to reap the benefits of that, as the subsequent modern day files seem to be pointing to, or there's a chance that the AI has already gone rogue or fully independent and everything that is happening is just a result of the Ego AI acting upon its modified core directives. Sadly, we have no way of 100% knowing at the moment, because this new modern day setting has us always in the Animus, and the files we had gotten by the time we played Shadows' main game were all about the past, so it was, and definitely still is, quite tough to know which state the world is in at the time of the player activating the Animus Ego and entering the Animus Hub for the first time. Anyway, after the final interference, the assassin hackers pull our main character in a new digital environment, and this is our first time entering what we call the Animus Hub or Dark Animus. As we access the hub, we see the same squares and rectangles, the same data packets that could be seen in the interferences during the Animus Ego video, but this time, most of these rectangles are featuring scenes from Assassin's Creed Shadows in a very similar fashion to what Marvel has been doing with its title cards in the last 2 decades or so. This is likely to tell us that these are genetic memories, that we are moving through genetic memories, that we are going to explore genetic memories, and looking at the most recent files, that these are the kind of memories that Abstergo is trying to suppress. And after that, we finally get to our landing page, the Animus Hub as we know it, which has the game selector with a page for each game, and then the dedicated projects, exchange, and vault pages. All that works as a landing page to enter the various games, of course, but what does the Animus Hub or Dark Animus mean lore-wise? Based on what we mentioned earlier, this is what the devs, and thus I suppose the assassins also, call the Dark Animus, a hacked and deeper version of the Animus Ego, where the assassins can give our main character, that is us, access to memories that Abstergo would never want to show. Hence why the game selector shows us the memory streams of all the main characters of the recent games, because in lore, the assassins/hackers supposedly want to show our main character more stories about the assassins and freedom-oriented characters, about their eternal clash with the Templars, about the conflict between freedom and control, and again, this makes a lot of sense story-wise, considering the latest developments about the Templars trying to erase knowledge and memory of the assassins, but we are getting ahead of ourselves here. Overall, it seems like we can consider this landing page, our Dark Animus, as a safe space, safe for now at least, that was created or accessed by the assassins, where the Templars and the Ego AI cannot reach, where our main character can move freely in between menus, and where they can perform actions and read documents supposedly without being spied upon. It is indeed here that we are able to read the various modern day documents, and it would make sense that it's the assassin hackers that are showing us these files or allowing us to gain access to them, because this space is controlled by them, otherwise the Templars or the AI would have no reason to show us such information. So it's a safe space within the Animus architecture, while outside not so much, as we'll see, but before we dive in the final modern day events of Shadows' main game, there's one more element of note here, and it's not in the vault page with all the modern day files, but rather in the memories page. While the memory streams for the main games are showing the year where the events of the game start, minus the prologues, on the left side there are way more peculiar and important dates, each of them associated with a dedicated memory stream, and you guessed it, we are going to go through them all and see what the assassins consider to be important enough to show us. 551 BCE. We're not starting great, I haven't found much about this date. This could be the birth year of Chinese philosopher Confucius, or the approximate date of Persian prophet Zoroaster. This isn't a year when anything has happened within Assassin's Creed that we know of, at least. 221 BCE is the start of the Qin dynasty, that is the first imperial dynasty of China under the rule of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. So this might be a reference to Assassin's Creed Jade, the mobile game that was planned to be set in 215 BCE during the Qin dynasty in China. Emperor Qin Shi Huang was later assassinated by legendary assassin Wei Yu in 210 BCE, so the 221 BCE date could also be tied to him. 100 BCE. This is the birth date of Julius Caesar and is likely what the date here is referencing. Julius Caesar is one of the most famous historical characters from ancient Rome, the first Roman dictator that laid the foundation for the Roman Empire, and within Assassin's Creed, he also at some point became the leader of the Order of the Ancients before being assassinated by Aya of Alexandria, Brutus, Cassius, and the other Roman senators. 100 BCE is also the start of the Tianhan era in China under Emperor Wu. 0 CE. This is of course supposed to be the birth date of Jesus Christ and a reference to the Templars killing him to get a Shroud of Eden, although it's not really the proper date. This is more like a mistake because the year 0 does not exist in the Anno Domini calendar system, and thus, by convention, the year 1 BCE is followed by 1 AD. Also, technically, Jesus was born in what by convention we call the year 6 to 4 BCE, but you know, I get what the devs meant. 121 CE is the birth of Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor that interacted with the Hidden Ones in Britain. Interestingly enough, following the ending of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the final villain Aspasia said that the cult of Cosmos would have been replaced by a new order, control under the reign of a philosopher king. That was a reference to the Templar Order potentially replacing the cult of Cosmos before that was kinda retconned. But nevertheless, a philosopher king is a hypothetical ruler in whom political skill is combined with philosophical knowledge, and historically, people hypothesized Alexander the Great and later Marcus Aurelius amidst the rulers that could be defined as philosopher kings. So by the time Odyssey released, some fans expected that the Templar Order might have been indeed founded by Marcus Aurelius, but that did not come to fruition as Valhalla made Alfred the Great the actual philosopher king that turned the Order of the Ancients, not the cult of Cosmos, into the Templar Order. 325 CE could be a reference to the First Council of Nicaea under the Emperor Constantine. It was a council of Christian bishops where it was established that the members of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, are equal and that Easter would be celebrated on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox. Otherwise, 325 CE is also the year where Cheng of Jin became emperor in China. 4 or 6 is the presumed approximate date of birth for Attila the Hun, the ruler of the Huns that was one of the most feared enemies of the Roman Empire at the time, and that got to create an empire spanning from modern Germany to part of modern Russia. Within Assassin's Creed, Attila is also known to have wielded a Sword of Eden. 800 CE is definitely a reference to the crowning of Charlemagne as Holy Roman Emperor. Within Assassin's Creed, Charlemagne was also a leader of the Order of the Ancients, as it was revealed in the ending of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. 1066 CE marks the start of the Norman conquest of England, specifically through the notorious Battle of Hastings of October 14th, 1066. 1191 CE is of course the year of the Third Crusade and the year where all the events of Assassin's Creed 1 take place, so yeah, it makes sense for these memories to be highlighted by the assassins amidst all the memories located in the Animus Ego. 1215 CE is primarily known for the signing of the Magna Carta, a document that limited the power of the English monarch at the time and established the principle that the king was not above the law. Through the old mobile game Assassin's Creed Memories, we also know that in 1215, during the First Barons' War in England, the assassins led by Robert Fitzwalter fought for the barons while the Templars were supporting the king against the terms of the Magna Carta. 1347 CE could be a lot of things. It's one of the years that the Black Death moves across Europe. It's also the year when Cola di Rienzo, a Roman commoner, declared himself Emperor of Rome in response to what had been several years of power struggles upon the upper class barony, and also it is the birth of Italian mystic and author Caterina da Siena. 1453 CE marks the year the Ottomans conquered Constantinople from the Byzantines, which signified the end of the Byzantine Empire and is often cited as a key event marking the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance. Within Assassin's Creed, this conquest of Constantinople at the hands of Sultan Mehmet II was also caused by an Apple of Eden in his possession. 1476 CE is definitely an Ezio date. It's the start of the events in Assassin's Creed 2, where Giovanni, Federico, and Petruccio Auditore are hanged in front of the Palazzo della Signoria in Florence. 1558 is the year marked by the death of Bloody Mary, Queen of England, and the succession to the throne by Queen Elizabeth I. Within Assassin's Creed, Mary was affiliated with the Templars and was killed by the Assassins. Elizabeth instead was a close ally of the Assassins and at some point came into possession of an Apple of Eden. 1558 is also the year of death of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, who also came into possession of a piece of Eden, the Trident of Eden, which he then passed on to Hernán Cortés to use it in his conquest of the Aztec Empire. 1616 CE, well, a lot of stuff happened in this year. This is the year where the Catholic Church's Congregation of the Index forbade the teaching of the Copernican theory, that is heliocentrism, which also affected Galileo Galilei. It's the year that marked the publication of Ben Jonson's first folio, a milestone in the history of English literature, but it was also a year that marked the death of several famous historical characters such as William Shakespeare, Miguel de Cervantes, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, Japan's famous unifier and shogun and lord of Hattori Hanzo, who also makes an appearance in Assassin's Creed Shadows. 1715 CE is definitely an Edward Kenway date. That's the start of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which every leak seemed to be pointing to us experiencing again quite soon. 1754 CE is another Assassin's Creed date. This time it's a Haytham Kenway one, and it is the start of Assassin's Creed 3 when Haytham goes to the Opera House in London to kill the assassin Maiko and get the key to the Grand Temple. 1754 is also the start of the French and Indian War, which acts as a backdrop for Assassin's Creed Rogue. 1789 CE is of course the beginning of the French Revolution and the start of Arno's story in Assassin's Creed Unity. In the very same year, George Washington was also inaugurated as the first president of the United States of America. And finally, 1868 CE is the start of the Fry Twins story in Assassin's Creed Syndicate. 1868 is also the year of the start of the Meiji Restoration era in Japan, which also triggered the Boshin War, which was represented in the novel Assassin's Creed Fragments: Blade of Aizu. So that was the list of additional dates and supposedly memory streams that I'd imagine our hackers consider noteworthy, although it's more likely that it's an Easter egg list of dates of sort by the developers, but of course, the main memory streams are the ones that matter the most for the hackers / supposedly assassins, but also and especially for us, the new main character of this new modern day setting set in the near future, because it's through them, through these memory streams that Abstergo never wanted to share, that this new Animus user gets to know about the clash between the Assassins and Templars, and more importantly, the freedom versus control conundrum, which, as we'll discover in our next video, is at the core of this new modern day story. So join us in our next video where we're going to meet the Guide, a mysterious AI that is going to literally guide us in this new Animus environment controlled by the Ego AI, as we finally get to the modern day ending of Shadows, with the clash between the two AIs and our main character emerging on its own out of it. Thanks for watching, a huge thanks to our ATA insiders and initiates for their incredible support, and I'll see you all in our next video.